neither trusts the other. And that really is the fundamental problem here that we have between the US and China is the absence of trust.
Global Eyes.
China and the United States are once again trying to make nice with each other.
This is Global Eyes. I'm Isha Bhatia-Sanan. I'm senior editor here at Deutsche Welle.
And I'm William Wilcroft, security reporter at DW. We are working on our latest episode for you. It's about China and India, their role in the Middle East, especially as Israel and Hamas are fighting another brutal war. There was so much to talk about that we wanted to pull out a little bit of some extra material for you with one of our guests. Have a look. U.S. President Joe Biden and China's leader Xi Jinping have met against the backdrop of the war with Israel and Hamas. Didi, Kirsten, Tatlow, international affairs correspondent from Newsweek, who knows a thing or two about China. Didi, how is this current war, which we do not know, of course, how it's going to end, how is it playing into U.S.-China relations and those tensions there?
Yes, so we're really at quite a sensitive moment, I feel. I mean, we had the Russian full invasion of Ukraine last year. Now we've got this situation in the Middle East. And of course, there are people who are looking to whether or not that so-called third shoe will drop, which would potentially be the Chinese invasion or occupation of some parts of Taiwan, if you like, or a blockade, something like this, at which point all bets will be off. I mean, really, just globally. So bad enough now. From China's point of view, obviously America being completely tied up in knots, if you like, and I'm thinking here domestically with the way the debate is going, with these re-election issues in the US next year, the very strong pro-Palestine voice among the youth. This is, of course, for Beijing in many ways advantageous and I wouldn't say welcome, but, helpful, if you like, because we have to remember always that for Beijing, America really is the other. It is the country to be outdone. It's the one to be, they are really, their rhetoric, but also their actions are really quite increasingly severe. And I would point here to what happened off the coast of Japan just shortly before Xi Jinping went to San Francisco for that APEC meeting recently. And that was a PLA naval vessel turning on a sonar and in fact injuring at least one Australian sailor who'd come off an Australian Navy ship to disentangle fishing nets from the ship's rudder, apparently. And, this is read as a very hostile act, as indeed, I think, by any analysis, it would have to be seen that way. And, this comes against an ally of the US. Australia is an ally of the US. And this is all kind of happening at the same time. So, yeah, from China's point of view, a America that is tied up in complex and expensive military situations, both in Europe and in West Asia or the Middle East, is a good thing, if you like, given their really quite, substantial hostility towards Washington, D.C.
Right. So because we know it's very clear where U.S. policy is on Israel, staunch ally of Israel, is that at all affecting or calibrating China's response, China's policy towards Israel and its war now with Hamas?
Yeah, I mean, I think that China has positioned itself very clearly on the so-called other side of this equation in public, with this very strong support for the people who rule Gaza. I mean, for Palestine, for the Palestinian Authority, for the rulers of Gaza, who are, of course, Hamas. It's made that extremely clear. It's sided with the Arab nations on this one, who do, as we discussed, need to listen to the Arab street and how people feel there about that, regardless even if the interests of many Arab countries and rulers may be a bit different. They may actually be a little tired of some of this ongoing conflict and poverty and sort of devastation surrounding the Palestine issue, and in some ways perhaps looking to move on, if you like, while of course also authentically sympathizing very much. So yeah, it's China has positioned itself there. The one thing I would say again would be that China really is thinking long term. It's working quietly, it's working carefully, it's thinking about its rise in all kinds of different aspects, military, economically, perhaps securing that second military naval base in West Asia, in the Middle East, in Oman, perhaps in Duqm port. They've already set up a trade zone in Oman, and we saw with Djibouti, the first port that China set up, the first military base, that in the case of the People's Republic of China and how it sets up overseas military bases, the flag follows trade, as they say. So first you start the trade, the flag follows. And that's what we saw in Djibouti, and that might be what we're looking at in Oman. So there's lots for China to game out here, including short-term interests, long-term interests.
So we saw them agreeing on AI, on climate change. But as far as the two most important conflicts are concerned, whether it's Israel-Hamas or Russia-Ukraine, they did not really agree on anything. So would you just say that they've agreed to disagree on these things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we had this climate change, there was also this issue with fentanyl, that there was kind of a promise given by Xi Jinping, the leader of China, that that China would act against the many companies in the People's Republic of China who are trading and manufacturing the precursors to fentanyl, which is really such a deadly scourge in the US. However, what was actually concrete about any of that? I would argue nothing really. The day after APEC, I think it was, the meeting had finished in San Francisco between President Biden and General Secretary Xi, and Gavin Newsom was, of course, very busy in that. That's the government of California. China issued a notice to its own people and companies reiterating Chinese law on drugs and fentanyl production and stuff like that, and saying, just remember not to break the law. And I mean, what is that exactly? I mean, what kind of a deal is that? That's not a deal. Yes, they've agreed to keep talking, but it's all very sort of, going through the motions, isn't it? So I think with AI, we have profound disagreement, while some agreement on the surface. Yes, let's talk about things, let's get together. But will the US and China actually, either of them, cut their own interests in really racing ahead with AI? No, I don't think they will, because neither trusts the other. And that really is the fundamental problem here that we have between the US and China is the absence of trust, no matter what agreement is or promise is made on the surface.
Right. Biden himself said trust but verify in his news conference after his meeting with Xi. Didi, did anything then come out of this meeting? I mean, the expectations are, as you seem to point out, very low. There is this reestablishment of military contacts, the so-called red phone. I mean, do you think the other side, we talk about trust, is there any element of trust, or at least an awareness of red lines that have been established?
Yeah, I mean, that's just also a great question. It's, one wants to be positive and etc., because it's all terribly important. But what was actually established there? I mean, on the climate issue, the agreements to cooperate on climate change. I would like to point out here that the company named by Gavin Newsom in the agreements he reached on his trip to China just before the Biden-Xi meeting in California, is actually a company that is involved in the production of enslaved labor issues in Xinjiang, in the far western Uyghur region of China. So there's a problem right there. Other issues, I mentioned the fentanyl challenge. And, the US administration really agreed to all kinds of stuff with climate. For example, the letting subnational, rich, broad and deep sort of subnational contacts between the People's Republic of China and the US, which means, of course, state level or like below the state level in the US, so California and down. And this is traditionally a way in which China sort of infiltrates and penetrates the United States. We've seen this pattern. And of course, it can do so because the US is an enormously open society. lots of business interests working there. The same is not true the other way around. The United States cannot connect to, reach into, and make deals with, local governments at the civil society level, at the district level, at the township level, at even at the provincial level. It cannot do that in China the way that China can do that in the US. And again, Biden, in this sort of series of sort of agreements, Biden has given that to China. So I think very much one to watch and wait and see, first of all, what really comes out of this, and second of all, is what comes out of it actually good for the United States or good for a democratic society in terms of this sort of power contest that we are seeing building. But of course, thirdly, I would like to say that, like everyone else, I hope very much that there is positive change. It takes two to tango.
So you're hopeful?
I don't think she said that. I don't think she said she's hopeful.
And I would like to be.
I think she's.
I would like.
You're hopeful about being hopeful.
I'm hopeful about being hopeful. See, I'm a positive person, right? But you see, because when you look at the signals coming out there on that sort of whatever it was exactly that they did with that Australian ship to the Navy divers there around the same time as this meeting in San Francisco, and this stuff is not a coincidence. They orders are given. The Chinese military is fairly deliberate. Things have to be approved before they happen generally. I don't know the specifics of this particular case, but we need to assume that this was some kind of a, maybe not a direct message, but at least it was a sign of how things really are, and so yeah, I would like to be hopeful. I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right, well, let's leave it at hoping to hope.
Yeah.
And Didi, thanks very much for those insights.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
This is part of a wider discussion. We'll be posting the whole episode very soon.
And you can get that, of course, anywhere you get your podcasts, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. We look forward to seeing you there.
Global Eyes, a new take on security policy by DW.